To period or not to period? That is the question. I ran across an article recently, thanks to one of my clients, that wound me up a little bit because it says right in the caption that the wave of the future may be going without a period. And I'd like to invite you to reconsider. Join me this week as we take a look at the pros and cons of continuous birth control use, what it's there for, what it does in your system, and why arresting a bleed might not have the kind of outcome that you're hoping for. Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an Eastern medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your menstrual health, offering period solutions for a symptom-free life.
Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. I ran across this article that absolutely incensed me the other day. It actually was brought to my attention by one of my clients, and I'm so grateful that she did, even though this particular article made me absolutely crazy. And I will include the link in the show notes so you know what I'm talking about. I just felt a podcast coming on as a result of reading it. So we've talked in some recent episodes about birth control, particularly hormonal birth control, although we did explore some of the non-hormonal options as well. And this particular article by Inverse that was released on February 1st of this year, unfortunately, it was released on my birthday, is a conversation about body autonomy and that the period is a dispensable aspect of being female. And I wanted to challenge a couple of the points in this article, and I thought they were very thought-provoking, and so I wanted to start a conversation around our cycling bodies, the importance of being cycling bodies in terms of our bone density and making sure that we have all of the minerals and nutrients that we're supposed to have, and what happens with prolonged hormonal birth control use. We have touched upon this in past episodes, so if you want to go back and revisit some of the episodes that we have discussed hormonal contraception, I invite you to do so. We covered that a fair bit here in season 2, But this article asserts that periods are indispensable. And I want to really clarify what they're talking about here, because this is a conversation that I do have with clients that come into my office. They think that taking hormonal birth control consecutively without having a period is, frankly, it's more convenient. I totally understand that. But the article has this big quotation and it says, "The future of hormonal contraception is eliminating bleeding if you can." Now, the original birth control pill did not have a withdrawal bleed. And we did talk about that in a past episode. It did not have a withdrawal bleed. So at the time that it was released, people were kind of freaking out when they didn't have a period because no period meant you were pregnant. That was the understanding at that time because there was no understanding outside of that. So with the introduction of hormonal birth control pills, we saw a disappearance of the period. Well, because the pill itself is giving you a withdrawal bleed, not an actual period. And that is a really important distinction here. Okay, because in this article, they talk about having periods while you're on birth control, and you're not. You are not having a period when you're on hormonal birth control. You are having a withdrawal bleed because there is no ovulation taking place and then a certain number of days later then a bleed is taking place. The hormonal birth control is arresting your body's ability to do that function, which is a way that it helps prevent you from getting pregnant. And so there's a withdrawal bleed that is part of the pill packet, right? You stop taking the hormones, you come off of them, you bleed for a certain number of days, and then you start taking them again. And that's how the birth control pill works. So when you were in the 1960s and the only time that you didn't have a period was when you were pregnant, of course, no period was going to be a source of panic. Now we have this misunderstanding in our culture that you have a period while you're on birth control and you don't. Because if the pill is working the way that it's supposed to, it is inhibiting a full cycle expression of hormones, which is what it's designed to do, so that you don't get pregnant. So the bleed that results during actively and consecutively taking your birth control pills the way that they are prescribed is by definition a withdrawal bleed. The withdrawal bleed is not necessary. So this is why I kind of wanted to dive into this article and pull it apart a little bit, because it is not required for you to have this bleed take place when you're on hormonal birth control. That part of the article is true. I think some of the terminology is a little misleading, however, because it says, experts agree it's absolutely not harmful to not have periods due to hormonal birth control. Well, but you're not having an actual period. So it is not harmful to exclude your body from having this withdrawal bleed because you're just continuing to arrest your hormone experience using medication. So in that respect, it's correct. But when they use the word period, it's making the assumption that ovulation is taking place and this is a cycling body without obstruction to the normal communication process, and that is not accurate. And I think that's important. Words are important, especially because there is so much of a collective misunderstanding in our culture about how our body works. So when you've got somebody who's a doctor at a hospital that says it's not harmful to not have a period if you're on hormonal birth control, people keep assuming that you're having a period when you're on hormonal birth control, and you're not. You're just not. And that is important to know, because then it changes the entire frame of this particular article, which is that it is not harmful to prevent yourself from having that bleed. Does it give you reassurance around the fact that you're not pregnant? Yes. But let's talk about the fact that being a normal cycling, bleeding body without having this medication introduced into the picture is healthier for your body than being reliant upon something, whether you're allowing for a bleed to happen or not, being reliant upon something that is arresting that process. Because when you are taking hormonal birth control actively for a prolonged period of time, whether you're allowing the bleed or not, you are creating certain mineral and nutrient deficiencies in your body. The medication takes that or inhibits it from being absorbed, or, fill in the blank. So you end up with certain mineral and nutrient deficiencies as a result of prolonged birth control use. So we see issues with ovulation returning. We see issues with being able to conceive after taking this medication for a prolonged period of time. There is some information that is just starting to surface in the research that shows that bone density in women who have taken hormonal birth control for prolonged periods of time, once they're in their later years, their bone density is more compromised. These are really real concerns, folks. So this article is very flippant in the fact that it's like, well, if you're taking birth control, you don't need a bleed, which in a culture where we are looking for the fastest solution, everything is an Amazon Prime kind of solution. I want it bigger, faster, and yesterday. Of course, people are going to be totally sold on an article like this because they're going to go, oh, hey, I don't need to have the inconvenience of having a bleed every month. Why am I doing this? But the challenge is it's making it look like we don't need to do this bleed because it's not contraindicated, but they're kind of glossing over the fact that the long-term hormonal birth control use is problematic. And that's part of what I wanted to raise in this particular episode. So the pill, like, for example, the progesterone-only pill can create risk for bone density loss because estrogen boosts bone density. This is why once we cross the menopausal threshold, bone density starts to become a very active conversation. And there are some people who are pushing back and saying that it can lead to higher fracture risk later on in life, but they don't do a lot in terms of supporting that with evidence, although there is evidence that it is coming to the surface. So you're not having a regular cycle when you are on a hormonal birth control pill. So words are important because we have a collective misunderstanding in our culture about hormonal birth control and that we have a period and we don't. We have a withdrawal bleed. It mimics a monthly cycle, but it is not actually a cycle. So there's lots of social reasons why the withdrawal bleed was put in there. Some of it was religious in nature because the Catholic Church, I mean, even still today, the Catholic Church isn't super keen on there being any form of contraception. Even though we live in a world that's overpopulated, they're still not a big fan of the idea, although they're very good about teaching fertility awareness. So fertility awareness, it's an option, folks. But in the 70s, we were looking at this big push for body autonomy. And in a post-Roe versus Wade era, we're looking for body autonomy and ways to prevent unwanted pregnancies. So we're starting to lean, like, birth control's been used for all kinds of things from period cramps to acne, right around the cycle. But we're starting to lean back in that direction a little bit because there's a lot of fear in a lot of places around getting pregnant because of the lack of access to be able to make body autonomy related choices. So then articles like this come out and they say things like there are benefits to continuous birth control and, we need to consider going without a bleed. And people who aren't really keen on their bleed, there's not a lot of people who absolutely love having their period come every month or a withdrawal bleed coming every month. It's very appealing to eliminate that option altogether, but you're not getting that little break in the hormones when you're taking things continuously. So if we're already seeing nutrient deficiencies as a result of taking birth control in general over a prolonged period of time, can you just imagine what those numbers might look like years from now, taking it without a break for a prolonged period of time? Sure, it may make things really convenient and easy right now, but what is it going to do for your health long term? What are your bones going to be like when you're an older woman and you've made that transition through your menopausal years? Like, these are real considerations that we're not doing enough to talk about right now. So we're leaning on these medications. They're literally prescribed for everything. Like I said, from painful periods to acne to symptom management and so much more. But it's not even allowing the symptoms to occur because the hormones aren't happening in the way that they would naturally. So instead of getting to the root of why those symptoms are happening in the first place, we're throwing a Band-Aid on it. We're essentially arresting the normal expression of hormones in favor of convenience or a toolkit that doesn't serve the needs of that particular person. So, there's real concerns, like I said in previous episodes, about IUDs and extreme pain and migration and all of those kinds of things. And, in this particular article, there was a person that is quoted in the article that says, that their parent doesn't think that having a period must not be good for them because they're not going through a regular cycle in their body. So why not just arrest this idea? So having a period isn't a bad thing. And honestly, for a lot of my clients, they look forward to it if there's some level of stagnation in their body because they get a sense of relief and they feel better. They feel lighter. They feel cleaner when they're able to have an actual period. I think the part about this particular article that really wound me up is talking about using birth control to manage menstrual symptoms because all it is covering up what's actually going on and theoretically making the problem worse in the future because now you're going to have to bring your hormones back up online, and that's not always a smooth process for people either. I have people that start to work with me when they're thinking about trying to have a baby. And, when they come off of birth control, their doctor will say something to the effect of, you can have one cycle and then you can go ahead and start trying. Well, okay, you can start doing that, but there's no guarantee depending on how long you have told your body not to have this normal expression of hormones. That could be 6 months before you actually start ovulating. It could be that month. It could be the next one. Could be 3 months from then. But I've seen people be 6 months or more if they've been 10 plus years on birth control before their body starts actually ovulating again. And ACOG's definition of infertility is 6 months of consecutive unprotected sex with no pregnancy resulting. Well, that's kind of like setting people up for failure. Or here's the conspiracy theorist a little bit, setting them up to go into a system that makes a lot of money. Because if you're unsuccessful in those 6 months, then you start having diagnostics done. You start having testing for both you and your spouse or whoever it is that is contributing to your birthing process. You start having escalation in how they're handling you right up to and including IVF. And for anybody who's ever seen the dollar signs around in vitro fertilization, you know that it is not an inexpensive process. There is money to be made there. So I can't say that there is anything chinky going on here, but it does raise an eyebrow and cause people to question, or at least I'm questioning and I'm inviting you to question some of these definitions and some of these structures that we have around caring for menstrual health. Yes, if you want to have your fertility in your hands, you should have the ability to do it. Absolutely. But I truly believe in the years that I've been doing this, that a lot of our menstrual health related challenges is a collective lack of education around how our bodies work. When we know how our body works and we know how our fertility works, we are only fertile 7 days out of the month, folks. Only 7 days. Why would you change your entire hormone expression to prevent pregnancy for 7 days? Doesn't that seem a little crazy? Now, for the people who are taking birth control because they are dealing with adverse symptoms, birth control doesn't fix. It doesn't solve. It doesn't get to the root of the problem. It stops the expression of what's happening. So yes, you get some temporary relief, but you have to come off of this medication someday. I know I'm a little biased because my birth control journey ended in a heart attack, But these are very real concerns. The longer that you're on it, the higher your risk factors for a lot of these very, very undesirable side effects. I can tell you from personal experience, I don't recommend being like rushed into an emergency room because you're having a heart attack from birth control. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not a great time. So, what do we do about all of this? We educate. We teach people about our bodies. We take a close look at those little inserts that come with the pills and the IUDs and really look at what could potentially happen to our system if we take it. People do not have to suffer with negative symptoms with their periods. They don't. I truly believe that if we do a good job educating the next generation and empowering them with the tools to be proactive about their health, that it is entirely possible to have an entire generation of women that have no idea what period disharmony looks like. I believe it's possible. Will it happen in my lifetime? No. But I'm hoping that this show, the work that I do, the work that the holistic women's health practitioners that I'm training do in the world, in our little microcosms, that is going to have a ripple effect. And we're going to be able to influence the way that women understand their bodies, because we deserve to be able to make informed decisions. And a lot of times when we're talking about birth control and taking it consecutively or taking it for years on end, or yes, I see that your blood pressure is a little elevated, but there's no cause for concern, those types of things shouldn't even be our experience, because we should have the information to be able to ask critical questions like, there's a risk of heart issues in my family. Is this safe for me to take? But we don't question it. Our doctor goes, here, this is going to solve the problem. They push the piece of paper from their script across the table, and they expect either the pharmacy to read you in on it or for you to explore the leaflet on your own. And let's face it, we're in a culture that's too damn busy, that's moving too damn fast. Nobody sits down with that leaflet. Nobody does. And I feel so bad for the women who spent so much time fighting to have that leaflet put in, for people to not take the time to look at it, because they were understanding that there were very real concerns around birth control, and they were trying to find ways to educate and intervene where people were dying around this medication. So when we look at articles that talk about taking birth control consecutively, it's a cause for concern. Our period is not expendable. It's a healthy part of our hormone expression. We do not have to get pregnant unnecessarily, but it requires a level of body literacy. So don't be the sheep. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, and I'm not throwing shade. Okay, I'm totally not. I was one of these people. This is how I ended up on the birth control gauntlet and in an emergency room at 25 years of age having a heart attack. I was a byproduct of the system. I have endometriosis. I was having horrific periods. They put me on it to quote unquote, and I'm using air quotes, quote unquote, control my period and help me be less symptomatic. And at one point, I had been told I didn't need to have a period. And as somebody with endo, it was better if I didn't bleed. And 10 years on that medication, man, and I almost died. So the risks are real. The risks are very real. And while the article at the very end says that the article isn't a call to cancel periods or to demonize the process of eliminating the bleed, I invite you to consider that there can be some very real health problems with prolonged birth control use, and definitely if you're taking it consecutively with no bleed. Because even the withdrawal bleed gives your body a break for a week every month from taking this medication. All I can do is speculate at this point, but if I had consecutively gone month after month after month with no period for more than just a couple of years, I can only imagine But honestly, my heart attack came in the second year I had been going without a bleed. So it makes me wonder. And it's why I invite the conversation for you to talk with a healthcare practitioner or to talk to somebody like me, weigh the pros and cons, get curious about your health, get curious about how to care for your body, get curious about how your body functions. Yeah, a period is a pain in the ass every month. You feel slower and lethargic. It's not that I have a negative relationship with my period. It's just that I want to go and do all the things. And when I know that I have to pull in and I have to slow down, that's frustrating for me because I have places I want to go and things I want to do, right? But that slowing down process makes me healthier. As somebody that has endometriosis, I have a 28-day cycle that is really pain-free. I get a little tired in the couple of days before it starts, but as long as I'm managing my stress well and I'm managing my lifestyle well, I really don't have pain. And it used to take me out of my life for days every month. So it is possible with education and being empowered with information about how your body works to get a hold of negative symptoms that you are experiencing in your body. I truly believe that it is possible if we only have the rules of the road to have a very symptom-free experience around our periods, but it requires being intentional about how we care for our bodies during our bleed, how we work and plan our work throughout the course of our month, because we have different energy levels and different gifts in each stage. And when we're not trying to swim upstream against the current and expend energy that we don't have, and we learn to swim with the flow of the water, saving and conserving energy every month, we get healthier. We have the energy to heal. We have the energy to feel better. We have the energy to take control of our life, to actually be present and live in our life. So making your period go away by means of medication and discontinuing a withdrawal bleed from your experience is only going to temporarily pause whatever might not be working in balance in your body. It's not going to fix it. It's not going to solve it. It might be more convenient for a short period of time, but what issues is it going to create for you later on down the road? Like I said, this conversation isn't to demonize anyone or to make anyone feel poorly about themselves or the choices that they've made. We can only make decisions with the information that we have. I can't tell you the number of times I've had this conversation with my mother because I started birth control as a teenager, not because I was sexually active, but because I was having massive period problems that were really destroying my quality of life. And the doctor said birth control would solve the problem. And my mom was like, let's do it, because my mom loves me and my mom wanted my life to be better, me to feel better, for me to not feel so yucky. And she did the best she could with the information that she had. That's all we ever do. But I raised this conversation and this line of thinking and invite you to get curious and actually question, am I doing this out of convenience, or am I doing this because I don't have any other options? If the answer is I'm doing this because I don't have any other options, I invite you to pursue that, because I assure you there are other options. And this is the space that I work in and I love working in, because I work between the lines, man. There's so many stops on this train that you can explore and lean into and inquire about and get curious about before you ever have to turn to medication and surgery. Because all of those things come with unwanted side effects that in a lot of cases are worse. than the fact that we live overstressed out, under-supported, under-resourced lives. And this is why we have cycle-related problems. So I invite you to question, to research other options, holistic women's health practitioners, naturopaths, steaming practitioners, acupuncturists, acutonics practitioners, and the list goes on and on. There are so many beautiful souls that are stepping into this space that want to help create solutions that are going to help you to live the most aligned, best version of your life. Birth control only pauses the experience for a short period of time. It doesn't solve the problem. So let's roll up our sleeves and get to the root of the problem.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist, herbalist, sound healer, and Chinese nutritional therapist Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment with Adrienne for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter to get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like us and follow Moon Essence Me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.